Hello, everyone. Gary here from Timeline Astrology. This is the November 2025 Sidereal forecast. So, in November, there is a lot of focus on Mars as we have a full moon in Aries on November 5th, and then we have a new moon in Scorpio on November 20th. These are Mars's signs. And with such an emphasis on Mars, with itself moving through Scorpio, its own sign, there's a great strength there. Now, unlike Aries with that full moon on November 5th, which is typically more expressive and outgoing and action orientated, Scorpio is less about outgoing and more about diving deep within ourselves and finding the reserves of energy within and the resolve to do something, and more especially to cut something out. Mars is very much about dealing with problems, and more especially in Scorpio. So, what it might do the month of November, I mean, is reveal things that we weren't aware of, problems perhaps we weren't aware of. Perhaps we were, but we didn't want to acknowledge, or we certainly didn't want other people to know about. But as it pushes that into our awareness, we have to deal with it. And by doing so, then we'll overcome it. That's ultimately where this is all going to take us. So it's actually a good thing to have Mars very strong. It doesn't mean that it's comfortable. It's not likely to be comfortable, but it's necessary. The other thing that's happening in the month is that Venus is moving through Libra, its own sign. So we now have two planets in their own signs, Mars in Scorpio, Venus in Libra. Venus in Libra, in a way, is even more powerful. It's what is termed root strength in Indian astrology, where a planet is particularly powerful and effective in doing what it needs to do. Venus in Libra needs to come to the table and negotiate and compromise and come to an agreement, essentially. So that's going to be a key focus as well. Now, when you add in Mars in Scorpio, as we're digging deep and dealing with these unearthed issues, we are overcoming problems and then negotiating the best terms and conditions for all concerned. So there's a great mix of energies in many ways. And of course, it could go sideways at any time. And one of the things that could certainly throw a spanner into the works is Mercury retrograde. So you're going to probably roll your eyes as soon as you hear the phrase Mercury retrograde, you're going to get all, oh my God, Mercury's going to go retrograde. But the thing is that Mercury retrograde is a time, like every Mercury retrograde, to slow down and pay attention to what you're doing. You know, it's not like you have to stop living, but you have to start paying attention. And it can feel like time is stretched out a bit with Mercury retrograde. And when you're stretching it out with this kind of discomfort in a way, when Mars and Mercury come together in Scorpio, you not only have this sort of discomfort of having a sort of maybe even an argument. There's certainly potential here for crossed lines and misfiring this and that, and missteps and miscommunication and misflights and miss this and miss that. And all of a sudden, you're in this situation where I was already dealing with these things that I really don't want to deal with. But now we've had some added complications here that I hadn't anticipated at all. And as I'm trying to work this out, and everybody else is, we're not really communicating as effectively. We're certainly not communicating as effectively with Mercury and Scorpio anyway, but now it's retrograde, even more so, and then also conjunct Mars yet again. So their exact conjunction is on November 12th, and that could be when things flare up in a big way. So be mindful of that. If you're traveling, leave extra time for your travels. If you are negotiating, if you're doing business, anything Mercury or Mars related, which is combined technology, if you're working with technology, be extra patient at this time, just as we had for the last conjunction of Mars and Mercury in October. There were some outages, a lot of websites went down. We can expect that and then some this time around. So be extra patient when you're dealing with all of these issues, as there are likely to be many. But again, the strength here of Mars is going to win out overall. And then the strength of Venus is going to help out overall. The other thing that's happening in the month is that Jupiter is going to also retrograde. And this adds further complexity into the month in a way, because although exalted while retrograde, it feels a bit like a mixed bag. It feels like there is a deep sense of knowing and trust and faith, even that things will work out. But in another way, because it goes retrograde, it's not showing the results outwardly as easily or as quickly as we would like. So if you just consider the word faith. The word faith applies to Jupiter. faith means that you cannot see it, but that you have faith that it is what it is, or everything will work out. And with Mercury retrograde also, where we're being tested and all of that, now that we're throwing in Jupiter retrograde from the 11th of November, it might really test us to keep the faith when things don't seem to go to plan. And now you start doubting yourself. Now you start wondering, am I meant to be doing this? Is this really what I'm meant to be doing? Jupiter's all about asking the question why. Like, why are you doing it? If you know the why, you'll do anything, you'll circumvent whatever you need to get there eventually. And in this case, you're going to have to do quite a bit of a round trip, essentially, because Jupiter stationing retrograde is going to move back signs into Gemini in December. As it does so, we're going to go back to the drawing board and try and figure out some details. And then it goes back into a square with Saturn in Pisces, where, oh, I'm not sure, is this really what I'm meant to be doing? But then again, it comes back in summer of 2026. By June 1st, 2026, Jupiter is moving back into Cancer, and we're more able then to feel that sense of optimism and faith and expansion and opportunity in our life, where before we might have just had a hint of it. In November, it's just a hint at what's possible, and we're not quite there yet. And we need to keep the faith now more than ever, knowing that we will get there eventually. And eventually means starting next summer, 2026. At the same time, in November, Saturn itself, which is in Jupiter's sign Pisces, is stationing to go direct. So Saturn, unlike Jupiter, is going to start moving forward in the coming weeks and months. And although it's going to station, so not move at all practically in November, and might feel like it's testing our patience around our big plans, it is at least going to move forward. It's almost like if you take your eye off the ball, then things work themselves out if we don't interfere with them so much. And while we're off busy thinking about, am I really meant to be doing this? And should I do this? Eventually things just start to iron themselves out and we start to figure things out and life just works itself out and we start to move forward with our plans again, our long-term plans with Saturn. So with Saturn moving forward and Jupiter moving back, questioning, yes, is this what I'm meant to be doing? And then Mars in Scorpio, all in a trine to one another, all of this moving into this trine aspect is going to help us out enormously because whatever about what we might be grappling with any one of those, we are all kind of in a way bringing everything to the table. So we're able to, in a way, ask every bit of us to get on board with what we want to do here. And it's kind of like the first month I've seen in a while where it feels like, yes, we're having to dig deep and overcome some challenge, but it's almost like the challenge itself is the impetus to start something. And then we get the ball rolling and then we get a sense of things happening finally. So November is certainly a dark month in other ways. The sun moves into Scorpio and it's a very internal month. But in that darkness, we find our resolve, our strength to do something, to respond to something, to feel the challenge, but to do it anyway. And yes, it's less of an outward expression like Aries is. It's more of an inner strength and consolidation of energy and focus of energy more so. But by doing that, we are going to be able to clear the path for where we want to go eventually. So think about November as kind of tilling the soil in a way, clearing the path, uprooting everything and clearing it all out so that we can get ready for the next stage. So that is November. If you want to go deeper with the astrology with me, you can find me on Patreon. That's patreon.com/timeline astrology. I go through the transits for each of the signs in more in depth. I also do a mid-month, more in-depth analysis of these transits for patrons. And I do a weekly posts as well and a monthly discussion. We're going to meet in a few days and talk about all of these transits in November. If you want to join me, it's only $5 a month. That's patreon.com/timeline astrology. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time.